Welcome back, darlings. So I've recently made some tweets and posts about how I value Pulse chain ecosystem. That includes EHEX, PHEX, Pulse, and PulseX. I'm going to show you how I can get a valuation of HEX to hit $2.88 combined, roughly around there. A lot of people want to know. And it's to do with adding up all the coins and assuming they are one Richard Heart coin. This is what I did. So what I've done is I went through and I found the real circulating coins and I added up the market cap for each one. And what I found is here you have EHEX, PHEX, Pulse, and PulseX. And what I've done is I put them all together. You get about $5.7 billion. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put it so you know this total number is a Richard Heart number right here. This is actually what we're long because of all the liquidity bonding. Here's some juicy information too. Cardano hit 100 billion in 2021. So did Binance. So I think we can break that and get a bit of a euphoria multiplier. Not an insane one. An insane one would be a 6x on top of our fair value. I would love that. But even if we got a 2 or 3x on top of that, on top of our fair value, it would be fantastic. So we're starting with this number of 5.7 billion. That's what it's worth today. Not even estimates. Okay, this whole ecosystem is worth that today. If we got back, so obviously, before we even begin, right, crypto's got to grow. So the total crypto market cap has to grow. Just quickly show you the total crypto market cap has to grow to about 10 to 12 trillion dollars. So this is crypto. So if I put it on a log chart, you can see we've got to grow pretty big. So this is a weekly chart. We've got to get about up here. All right, we've got to get to around up here. All right. Now it doesn't have to be. Look how fast we're growing. We could probably get there up like somewhere here. Hopefully. About 10 trillion. If we get there, the valuations for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all of crypto, they are well equipped to give us what we're looking for based on the competitive advantages we see today. All right. So think about that before any of these assumptions. A lot of people just say it'll never happen. All right. It can happen, but you got to plug in. You got to plug in the future here. There's more people, higher numbers, valuations for everything went up. All right. So Richard Heart's ecosystem. So you add up all the coins. It's 5.7 billion. That's why I kind of say to split it all around. Now, what you can do is you can kind of see the HEX adoption, the stakers. It's about 150,000. So what this is, okay, what I'm about to tell you is the dream scenario. The dream scenario, which I don't think will happen, is this, all right? Do you see how there's 4 coins here? You know Bitcoin from the early days, what it started with is different to today. Everybody was like Satoshi, lover, respecter, anarchy, free the money, free the world type. Everybody was like that. There is still that exists, but it's changed now. You've got Michael Saylor. He doesn't combat the government. You know, he bought Roger Ver's bags, 29,000x higher. They care more about just beating Ethereum rather than like trying to do their own thing. And they're not as fast to move. It's not bleeding edge anymore, right? So this changed. Ethereum was also the bleeding edge new kid. It came along, but now it's morphing too. Ethereum's got a lot of VCs around. Ethereum's not scaling. It used to be the kid who moves fast. Now it's slowing down. It's not moving as fast. It's possible that this happens too with our ecosystem with Richard Heart. But this is what I'm talking about, the dream scenario. For all the users who join in the future, for us to get gargantuan, giant, high valuations, you basically need every single person who joins. I'm going to get little brush here. You need every single person who joins each of these to be a new person. So the next 800,000 people who join PulseX, next 1 million people, they can't be the same million people who join Pulse. And they can't be the same million people who buy HEX and join HEX. We know that's very unrealistic. All right. Now, if we got those, then we would, I can't even tell you how high we'd go, right? We'd like HEX over $10, etc. And then Pulse, 1000x from day one sacrifice. I don't think that's going to happen. I believe it's more likely that everybody's going to come in and continue to value the ecosystem as they do today. Because right now, it values everything as one Richard Heart coin. That's what everything says today. I've shown the videos, I've shown everything. The market perception of everyone, of how everyone puts the numbers together and where everyone thinks they should be, is about a Richard Heart coin. I hope it changes, and I hope new people come into each one, and they don't, maybe they start to not agree with different ones. You know, for example, we might find PLS dwarfs HEX. You know, maybe the new people just like layer 1 chains, or maybe the new people like DEXs and like, nah, I don't really like HEX. So that's possible, right? You got to keep your mind open. I know a lot of people get a bit upset hearing these types of things, but hey, do you want to grow? Do you want your bags to bump or not? See, Richard even pivoted his marketing. He's never going to go back to super old Richard. You're never going to see that again, because all of us, we responded to the old type of Richard. All right. He now has to get the next 100 million people in. That's what he's aiming for. He has to do new marketing. It's not going to work on people already in the system. So I'm just here to prepare you for that. All right. A lot of people get a bit emotional for that. Don't worry. It's going to be fine. Do you want your bags to bump or not? Okay. So Cardano hit 100 billion in 2021. If you ask me what's the truth, just give me the conservative view. What are we looking at? Instead of, based off these numbers, so for us just to hit Cardano and Binance peak in 2021, instead of multiplying all of these numbers individually by a 20x, you basically only get each one like a 4x. All right, so if it goes 4 times 5 is 20. So the 20x is split between all of these. All right, so, you know, 25%. So I'm going to write it down here. So 20x. All right, so what it would be is it gets split. All right, so you got like this. This is very hard to swallow, but it's not going to be the truth, because we know there's going to be new people who come in and they're not going to overlap between each coin. All right. So now we have the HEX stakers, and I can just do a very off the cuff guess with as to where we're going to be in the future if you just to keep assuming we keep adopting. And of course, this is the big assumption, right? But if you assume we just keep adopting, what I think is going to happen is these number of stakers and holders, right? So if you have a check here, you can just see the numbers, right? See the little numbers, the stakers. I like using the stakers because it's people participating, but you can use really anything, right? You can use any of these numbers. There's no real perfect formula. We're so bleeding edge. We're in the shadows. There's no real no knowledge out there of how to do these exactly. I'm the only one who's putting this out there, and that's what I want. So all I'm going to assume is that this number just keeps going up, all right? And you see there was actually a kink here in the bull markets. Just imagine that happens again, right? So we were doing this in a bear market while going minus 97% down. Let me write that for you. While going minus 97% down, we went up like this. That is bullish as hell, all right? That was absolute destruction. So you see this? We're going to go here, and we're going to just draw. Let's go. Sorry, friends. All right. I'll just draw it up. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to assume it hits about 1 million to 1.5 million. All right. So I'm going to do a 10x. So where it is here, it's about 1.5 million. Let's just go up around here, whatever it is. All right. Now, 1.5 million from where we are today is about 10x. And we know from Metcalfe's law, if you increase the user base by 10, you get a 100x price. And that would just kind of barely be fair value, because we know crypto most of the time overshoots this. It does not just stop at around fair value. I only found one case, and that was Cardano, but I found like 7 other cases where it blew through euphoria, and it gave a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6x. Bitcoin in its early days did a 10 and 13x above its fair value. Can you imagine that? Okay, so we have a 100x that we're dealing with. And what you can do is, this is where you're just going to have to plug in some numbers. We'd have to guess, okay? We don't know. If we got to around 1.5 million people, you'll then say, okay, well, we've got 100x here. What would the euphoria number be? Now, if you put this number too high, you're probably going to hold forever, and you're going to have to hold through the next bear market. And if you put the number too low, you probably sell too early. I like to use what happened to Bitcoin over time. So Bitcoin started with like a 10 to 13x, and then I think the next one was like a 6, and then one of them was like a 4, and then in the 2021 it was like a plus 80%. All right. So in the second wave, it about halved. All right. So instead of, and by the way, so you want to know, hey, what did HEX do in its first cycle? It was a 6. It was a 6x above euphoria. Sorry, a 6x multiplier above fair value in the euphoria. All right. So if you give this out about a 3, all right, now we're looking at something. All right, so what I'm going to do is multiply this 100 by 3. Now we have a 300x. But, okay, now obviously, look at this number. This is where the numbers get crazy. Okay, so remember what I just went through. I said to you, in the dream scenario, you add the multiplier individually for each coin. You don't value them as one whole Richard Hart coin. Okay, that's the dream scenario. But here, we're going to see what happens to the numbers if you don't do, if you just look at one, right? So if you just look at, say, HEX, for example, you get $9. $9 for HEX. Now, imagine what's going to happen to PHEX. Both of them $9. And then what's going to happen to Pulse? And Pulse is going to be absolutely insane if that happens. Okay. I hope that happens, right? If we try to lower the numbers a bit lower and see where we can fit all of this, we can just say, hey, based off today, the market seems to put all these into one coin. So perhaps that 300x, maybe you just got to divide it by 4. This is an assumption as well, right? We're assuming that HEX, Pulse, and PulseX all go up the same. So we are assuming that their ratios never break. But I'll let you know at the beginning of this video, it's possible that the ratios do break. It's possible that PulseX screams. It's possible that the new people coming in just want Pulse. It's possible that they want PulseX and Pulse instead of HEX because these are in first cycles. PLS is cycle 1, PulseX is cycle 1. So whatever number you plug in here changes the game for everything from now on. If you just say, hey, let's just assume they are split. Let's just say they're split equally, right? We don't actually split by 4. We're going to split by 3 because you got the HEX combination as we can do it with a HEX combination here, all right? So if we divide it by 3, you can do 4, it doesn't really matter. You'll get about each a 100x, which is pretty good. This is the absolute top of the euphoria. So it would be about $3. By the way, this would be combined, sorry, for EHEX and PHEX. So a 100x from the 3 cents, 3 to 4 cents is where they are, is going to give you about $3 to $4. So this is, if you add EHEX plus PHEX today, so EHEX plus PHEX equals about 4.5 cents, right? So you give it that 100x, target equals $4.50, right? Or $2.25 each. That's where you'd get to there. And then for PulseX, if you do 100x from here, okay, 100x from today equals 50x from day one sacrifice, all right? So this is, I've made a lot of videos. This is where my numbers are, it's roughly around 50x of where it comes, all right? Now, I am telling you, it can still keep going because I'm assuming that the ratios never break, and I put a euphoria multiplier of like 3, all right? It doesn't have to go there. I just got to remind you, I plugged in the assumption that HEX got to 1.5 million people. Like, what if it got to 2 million people? We ever thought of that? Like, now the numbers get bigger. Do you see why this is nearly impossible to measure? But at least you kind of get an idea. Hey, like, you know, if we grew 10x in size, and we've grown heaps before, remember we started with 10,000 people. So we went from 10,000 people, actually 5,000 from the start, and now it's 150,000. Okay, so I mean, look how big it went. So you might think in that first cycle, 150 divided by 5 started, okay, did a 30x in its user base. Now, of course, we want to believe that never diminishes. But what if it diminishes? What if the next one is only a 10x in the user base? That's how we get the 1.5 million total people at the end. All right. So this would be about 50x from day one sacrifice up here. And then if you do a 100x for PulseX, for Pulse, sorry, PLS, you're going to get roughly the 150x to 200x. 150x to 200x from day one sac. And you can see how everything seems to line up. I'm going to take you back to Cardano, Binance, and Richard Hart here. So this was the peak of 2021. They hit 100 billion market cap. Does this make sense when you put all of this together? Because at the end of the day, these numbers are going to be enormous. But I want to try see, of course anything can happen, but can we like really believe this happening? All right. The real market cap for HEX circulating coins is only 90 billion. There's actually less because Greg probably owns a lot, but I'm going to assume worst case, okay, 90 billion. So 90 billion times 4, right? $4.50. Let's just say $4 would be 360 billion. So this is where we're going to have to maybe suspend belief, and we're going to have to see, right? So 360 billion for the HEX part. So what I've done is the EHEX and PHEX part, future target, 360 billion. Okay, here. What about PLS? This number is going to be now, we're going to add about a 200x on 0.67, so 670 million. It's about 130. Let's just round it. There'll be some euphoria. 150 billion. All right. And what about PulseX itself? This would be 50 billion because it raised about 50 billion at the start. So, I mean, remember, a lot of people will be like, nah, these numbers can't happen. Well, look, I'm talking about the top of the top of the top, the peak euphoria. Something came out, make everyone rush in. And now you have these wild numbers. You have 560 billion market cap for all this. 560 billion MC, which is very interesting because what we've actually done is we've found this is Richard Hart doing 100x from today. His whole market cap everywhere does 100x from today. I want you to just think, can this happen? Yeah, it can. But this is the numbers we're dealing with altogether. These are the numbers we are dealing with. 560 billion if you combine them. All right. Also, to play devil's advocate again, we're also dealing with the fact that remember the assumption is that the new people coming in, there's going to be some overlap, but there will be new people. So what's the importance of that? The importance is, for example, let me give you the best example. There is a difference between Bitcoin people moving over to HEX and Ethereum people moving over to Pulse. Do you see the difference? They are two different market caps. They're two different mind shares. People in the Bitcoin camp, conservative, etc., etc. People in the Ethereum camp, they also have their own different views, right? They probably don't overlay too much. So you might say if they both come in, it's a value add. It's like two pieces of the pie that we actually grew the pie in that regards. Whereas compared to what we saw with the sacrifice phase, if there were two people and they had pretty big HEX bags, them just donating or rotating their portfolio around, because what they did was their market cap for HEX, so they removed their HEX and they just put it into Pulse. All right, so that's where it's a bit of a dilution there. It's a bit of a stock split. They didn't really the new $1 million sacrifice didn't come from them. It came from a few other people. But if you were just looking at those two people, for example, who were within the HEX ecosystem, maybe they were sharks, got in super early, right? You didn't do the same effect as if someone with $1 million from Bitcoin came over. Okay. Now, this isn't even my theory. This is just how the market seems to value these. And I've got to take you back. Remember my first assumption here. None of these are possible unless total crypto market cap grows to 10 trillion. We need that. Without that, none of this happens. Because, look at this. Obviously, we can't get those numbers today. The total crypto today is 1 trillion. So yes, Richard Hart can't become 56% of the size of the entire crypto market cap. But can he become 5%? You might even say that's too big. And that's fair enough. But this is the beautiful part. I have what I call a very famous bull-tard factor. And what I do is I make my valuations like this. And then I say, all right, how about I just divide everything by 3? 3 is a good number. Every time I do this, somehow things just seem to fall in line and you protect yourself from danger. So you might divide this by 3 and you get about 186 billion. Effectively, what this also means is you're dividing the other returns by 3 as well. It's exactly the same thing we've done, all right? So can we see Richard Hart getting to, instead of like 180 billion market cap, I think we can get there. That's less than a 2x above Cardano and Binance, right? Cardano and Binance combined was 200 billion. Can we get to their size in that next cycle? I think it's very possible, all right? But also, you got to remember, when you plug this in, I'm sorry, but we're dealing with less numbers now, all right? I know this is going to suck, but you know that $2.25 each HEX? Yeah, it's going to be 75 cents each. It's going to be $1.50 combined, all right? So a lot of you actually want me to write down these super conservative numbers because I would want you to be in the conservative camp. Have enough such that EHEX equals 75 cents, PHEX equals 75 cents. This is where I get all my numbers from. I told you, yes, I want these to go super high, but I want you to protect yourself. So EHEX 75 cents, PHEX 75 cents. If you do PLS from your sacrifice, a 60x, PLS equals, you do 65x from day one. And then you can do PulseX, which would be about an 18x from day one. From day one. This is what we're dealing with, all right? So I'm going to actually give these a separate area so we can actually focus on these and conclude. This is the numbers we are dealing with, all right? So a lot of people get this confused too. When they hear these things, all right, this is what I'm going to show you this, okay? The baby dolls. When you hear these, okay, here are the coins. I don't want you to have this attitude that it's bearish. Oh, it's going down. It's not going to go up as much as I want. It doesn't care, man. The market doesn't care. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about me. It's the collective mindset of thousands and thousands of people, and it'll be millions of people who are valuing this. Me and you, we're outsiders. We're irrelevant. It doesn't care. We can be on the way to the moon. Bitcoin can poop the bed in 2025. The Bitcoin spot ETF might put it on and then take it off and ban it. A lot of these things, a lot of these random risks can happen. So how can you protect against these? Because you don't want to do leverage. You don't want to expose yourself to any of the other dangers, right? The answer is what I'm about to tell you. You've heard 1,000 times. The answer is to increase your bag size now. Can you get another job? Can you get a third job? Do you have cash savings? Do you have Bitcoin to sell? Do you have Ethereum to sell? Do you have anything around the house to sell? Increase your bag size. Can you go to your savings? Let's say you have like, some people got like $20,000 savings. Can you do something like, hey, take 10,000 out of it, invest it now, and then spend the next year replenishing that 10,000 you took from your own kiddie bank? Can you do that? Look for all these avenues, all right? Because if you are lazy and you're the person, let's say you actually need a 300x to retire, but it only stops at 100x to 150x, you're not going to get out there, no chance, right? Because your next stop is down, you're going to be looking at a 15x. That's a long way down from that minus 90%. This is what you have to do. This is actually how you win the game. Have you ever heard anybody say this? No. No one ever says, dude, the only way to win is to go super aggressive. You actually got to put your balls and your ovaries on the line. Otherwise, you are going to be looking at massive disappointment. So I'm going to let you know, if you're disappointed by these numbers, there's nothing wrong with you, man. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with you, but I want you to know you're setting yourself up for potential failure. All right. I am happy at these numbers. Are you? Right? If EHEX and PHEX combined is $1.50, that means your body and your mind saying to yourself, I've got enough. I've done well. I've got good bags, right? That's what you're saying to yourself. Same as all these numbers, right? Now, I want these to go much higher, of course. Got to restate that. I want these to go much higher. But market doesn't care what we really want, right? All that's going to matter is that final number at the top, and I'm guaranteeing no one's going to be out, okay? If you can increase the quantity of your bags, you will strongly be in favor of thinking rationally at those times, right? Maybe Jim Cramer calls for $300,000 Bitcoin. Maybe Peter Schiff gets bullish at the top. Maybe there's a Bitcoin spot ETF. Maybe so many of these things just start happening all in the same 3 months, and I'm out here going to be making posts about it. But you might be one of those. There's going to be 95% of people who say, no, we're going to keep going. You were wrong before. It kept going. You made a warning sign. And it kept going up. Okay, you don't want to be in that situation. All right. So this is what you can do. All right. Now you have the answer. Go in peace, my friends. Tell mom and dad that you love them. I'll catch you in the next one.